reflect the views of Urban One Incorporated, Radio One, or any of its subsidiary companies. Attorney Nathaniel Lee, a lawyer with credibility, success, and experience. Representing people in hundreds of jury trials, Nathaniel Lee is who you want by your side in the courtroom. You've seen the rest, now hire the best. Contact Lee, Cosell, and Feigley today. And now, to address the legal concerns of the community, Praise AM 1310, 95.1 FM presents Legal. Here are today's hosts.
Good morning, everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee. Thank you once again for joining our show. The world is spinning. There's so many important issues that are occurring, and thankfully we got our superstar panel, Attorney Marlon Prime's going to educate us on. There are so many bizarre things going on with the Department of Justice. Sometimes some people are referring to now as Department of Injustice. And, but we're happy and not fully gratified that the economy, the federal government is now, the shutdown is over. And I just felt really bad watching painfully as all these federal workers were struggling to pay their bills. The air traffic controllers were forced to work without pay, the military, and a lot of different people. It's a very sad thing. And the longest shutdown, I think, in American history. And I think it has some permanent effect on a lot of people. A lot of minorities used to work for the federal government. I say, we call it BT before Trump. And so we see food lines and things like that. And it changed, Marlon, it changed my thought process for the Christmas process, what a law firm started doing, because the high cost of groceries and things like that, instead of buying toys, we started donating money for food because I saw that there's a shortage. A lot of people, they're talking about these price differences, they're saying 2%, but, that 2% is not realistic. It's depending on the things that you get. Like, for example, I buy coffee. I used to buy my Starbucks coffee in a little green bag for $6.99. Now they're $10.99. I mean, that's not 2%. That's like what? Go from 6 to 10. That's 40% or 50, whatever it is. And then if, once a month, I like to buy a steak and the price of steak double, they become unaffordable. I mean, who want to pay that much money for a steak? I mean, it's insane how the price increased so much. So there are certain things that I would buy and that I didn't see a 2%, I seen like a 30 to 40% increase in certain items. And then the other thing is that we started the process because we wanted to buy a bicycle for one of the projects we were doing for some needed kids. And we used to buy the bicycles in China, Marlon, for 50 to 60 bucks, with shipping costs another 20 and it cost $70 to $80. Well, this year, the bicycle in China prices were reduced to $40 to $50. The shipping cost in tariffs was $280, So there you have it. So we had to change our philosophy this year for giving. And, but let's start off the Justice Department. What's going on there?
Well, hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Nathaniel, and all the listeners out there. This is a very difficult time. I can tell you, Nathaniel, that the prior two longest shutdowns, I was a federal employee. And so I can personally attest the pain that this causes. During the third longest shutdown, my wife was 9 months pregnant, and I had a jury trial. And so my late father had to come to trial every day because I was afraid that my wife's water may break, and we wanted to make sure that she was safe and get to the hospital or address any concerns that she may have. And we weren't getting a regular paycheck, so I had to pay to travel every day downtown. And then the second longest shutdown was during the first Trump administration. And that was equally painful because, again, if you're deemed essential staff or if you have a trial, you are required to go to work, but there is no paycheck there. So I just think that our listeners need to really understand that the federal employees, they're innocent. And, we should not use them, any political party, to make a point. I mean, you make your point, but you don't punish people. And the concern that I have is that there's so many residual impacts. You look at, places, Indianapolis, where there may be, a federal group of workers, maybe a federal building. That's going to impact the people that run restaurants or parking lots. The same in Virginia or Maryland, where you have a large number of federal workers. So there's a lot of residual, downsides to that. And I just think that that should be the third rail, and make your point, but don't hold people hostage. And then the final thing I'll say is that I'm glad the federal government is back and operating. And the concern about food stamps, and I think this really should make us focus on this very, very important program. The program, there's a lot of people that have criticisms of it, and there any federal program or any program, whatever, on any level, could have problems, and let's fix those. But I think we have to understand that, hey, these programs are widely needed. And, what the media didn't really tell you is that a lot of these Republican districts, they have an oversaturation or more than the statistical average nationally of individuals getting these food stamps and food benefits. And the other thing that's really important for us to consider is that a lot of these grocery stores, in order for them to maintain operations, especially in, poor neighborhoods, some inner city neighborhoods, that's a big part of that grocery store's income. So if those food stamps are not coming in, then you're going to increase the phenomena that we've talked about in terms of food deserts, where poor communities, minority communities won't have any grocery stores in walking distance where they can get fresh food and vegetables, and those have, adverse health incomes. So, and then finally, the Department of Justice is really, in shambles right now. And I think, your listeners should understand that the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office are the Department of Justice representative in the field in various states around the country. All right, you have Main Justice in Washington, and you want those jobs to be stable jobs because, these are individuals that enforce, federal criminal laws to make, our community safe, and they protect the United States when they're sued in federal and state courts. So you have a whole bunch of defensive attorneys that make sure that any claims that are paid are meritorious. And so what's happening now is you're having a wide exodus of people that are very, very experienced. And so, that's a clear and present danger, for our country, that we don't have that expertise, and we don't want to make this office political because that can have adverse consequences as well.
Well, one thing that I thought that's important, most of the folks that I've seen that was required to use public assistance, such as food stamp, they run out of money or fund for the food stamp program after 3 weeks. The money that they're getting for food is deficient. And it's a sad commentary that the small amount that our country spend to help feed children and women and disabled person, they're hypercritical about it. And in reality, we're the wealthiest nation in the world, and we should take better care of citizens in need. There's a lot of people that, because of circumstances beyond their control, become unable to work, unable to pay their bills, unable to pay their housing. And there's a multitude of reasons. We see in this administration, Marlon, we saw people in the federal government with outstanding jobs, good benefits. They had savings. They did all the right things. They volunteered for local charities. They donated to their churches or their nonprofits. Then all of a sudden, one day, new administration come in, and they had this group called Doge or Dodge, DOGE, and suddenly these folks find themselves out of a job. So what happens to career public servants who worked at a place 25, 30 years, and they have a specialized skill, and their skills are based on government services? Maybe there is a correlative employment opportunity in the private sector, but it's probably not going to be within a half hour or so of their home. And so the point I'm making is that I think that this process has been more damaging than what people realize because it goes across the board. And the bottom line is that we have to do more to make sure that the people that are needy get more benefits. Is imperative. Now, Marlon, it was some crazy thing that some litigation, the former FBI director and Letitia James, the Attorney General from New York, they got indicted. And I didn't understand this process. It's kind of complicated to me because I don't remember in American history where President of the United States say, go by and investigate my political rivalry, that the Justice Department actually took the lead and followed those instructions. I've never seen that happen before.
That's really dangerous. And what's really, disconcerting for me is that, you can be a conservative and, be a MAGA supporter. That's fine. That's part of your right. But, we can't lose sight of the fact of what is right and wrong. And, we have to be, speak, especially in the legal profession, with one voice, that, we are a nation of laws. We cannot have a circumstance where a president basically, sicks the apparatus of government on people that he does not like. That's what all Watergate was about. That then President Nixon, the allegation was that he was using the apparatus of government to attack this enemies list. And so as a result of that, the aftermath of Watergate, you had a lot of ethics rules. You had a lot of separation between the executive branch and the president and the Department of Justice. And there was really a very conscious effort to make sure the president wasn't giving political speeches at the Department of Justice, and all those kind of red line barriers kind of have been eviscerated. And it's really unfortunate that that has taken place. And you're right, there's no one person that should be the judge, jury, and executioner. And that's basically what happened, that the president basically said it was a text that was intended for the attorney general's eyes only, and he made the statement that, hey, these people, Comey and Letitia James and others are guilty as H, and that, hey, there's, in so many words, they need to be prosecuted. Well, that's not how the process works. You have a grand jury of your peers that makes a determination as to whether or not there's enough evidence to move forward. And so what happened in these two cases, it's really coming to light now, that you not only have a president who basically overstepped his bounds, then you had career, government employees. In fact, you had a Republican U.S. attorney that was appointed by the president who looked at the evidence in, one of the cases and said, hey, there is not enough evidence to prosecute. And then knowing that he was going to get fired, he went ahead and resigned. That's not how this process should work. And then the third thing that the shoe that fell, there are rumors that the U.S. attorney that was then appointed, who didn't have any experience being a prosecutor, worked as an insurance lawyer, engaged in some improprieties as it relates to the grand jury process. Now, what you're supposed to do, just so your listeners have a fine point on it, the grand jury process is in secret, and they only really hear what the prosecutor is saying. But Department of Justice rules basically indicate that you should not only explain why somebody should be indicted, but if you have information that shows that they are not, responsible, that has to be presented as well. And so the information that the prior U.S. attorney relied upon to say there wasn't enough evidence, that has to be presented. And there's an allegation, at least by Comey and Letitia James' counsel, that in fact was not done. And there's another allegation that we'll see, if it bears out to be true, that this U.S. attorney that the president appointed that didn't have experience as a prosecutor really just locked these grand jurors in the room until they reached a decision that she liked. And there was an allegation that initially they said that there was not enough evidence. So if that plays out, this could be some bar association consequences for this attorney that the president put in that position to get these indictments. So it will be very interesting, and your listeners should understand that this court in the Eastern District of Virginia indicated that they're going to issue a decision by the 24th, by Thanksgiving. So a lot of this information will be in the public sphere. And if it turns out to be, these allegations turn out to be true, I mean, I think all lawyers have to speak with unison that this is inappropriate. And I suspect that if there is any finding, that there'll be some bar association implications as it relates to this U.S. attorney in terms of her meeting her ethical obligations. So we'll have to stay tuned in that front.
Well, I'm concerned about that. That's shocking to me. I didn't realize that small detail. So, but the problem that, I'm not a criminal lawyer, counsel, but when they do the grand jury, I thought that they never publicly released the names and address and contact information of any of the grand jurors. Is that where the process still works?
It's true. The grand jury goes in secret, all right? So it's behind closed doors. And then the prosecutor just presents evidence that says, hey, XYZ person should be indicted. All right. And so during that process, you not only have an obligation, at least under existing Department of Justice rules, to show, hey, I have a witness that saw this, particular individual do X, Y, Z. Well, you also have to present evidence that someone said, if there's evidence out there that says, hey, they weren't there at that same time. So the allegation, again, this is just an allegation, was that that was not done in this case. And the other thing that's really, interesting is that the U.S. attorney, that's the head of that office, normally isn't the person that leads the grand jury. They usually have an underling, a junior attorney. So the fact that she had to do it after career prosecutor said there was no evidence to move forward kind of says a lot about whether or not anybody truly believed that this was the appropriate way to go. Because your listeners should know that we certainly have an obligation to support our clients and advocate for them, but we can't put forth false evidence. We cannot, violate any rules of ethics. And those rules of ethics are that you have to present both sides. You can't railroad somebody. So we will see if the prosecutor that the administration hired, fell short of that standard. So it'll really be interesting to see what this decision will be in right before Thanksgiving. Now, those who observed the proceedings, there are a number of commentaries online that indicate the judge was very skeptical of the Department of Justice and what they did. And there's the other issue of whether or not this U.S. attorney even had the authority, because her 120 days, you only have 120 days if somebody leaves, and that's the limit of your appointment. And they're saying that, hey, that time period ran out. So those are some of the allegations that the court will have to wrestle with, and we'll see what happens in those two cases.
Well, the third fascinating thing that occurred during our break is California passed Proposition 50, and which is a new ball game. Meanwhile, Texas legislator without voter approval, arbitrarily engaged in redistricting of the congressional district. So he redrew maps that they thought originally would give them a minimum of 5 additional seats. But much to a lot of people's surprise, some of those seats that they thought were guaranteed had a high level of Hispanic population. And unbeknownst to me, they were saying that the Southern Hispanic Texas the southernmost part of Texas had a high level of Hispanic residents. They were saying that those Hispanic voters, a lot of them were Trump supporters. And they had different reasons, because they have religious reasons. Some of the men just wouldn't vote for women. There was a potpourri or a wide range of reasons that they voted their way. But they were saying now that demographic that maybe favored Trump now are 70% against Trump. And so the Texas map that they drew, they think will actually backfire because they did not include the change in direction of the Hispanic voters. And so now it looked like this gerrymandering process may end up coming up a duck. Like here in Indiana, the Republicans in the Senate said, no, we're not going to agree to do that. And so the redistricting in our state that the Trump administration had pushed, Marlon, looked like it's a dead issue for now. But like all dead issues, they have a tendency to revive themselves at different times.
Yeah, these are really troubling times, and I think we need to really unpack this, for our listeners. And it really is a teachable moment for us as African Americans and all Americans, because if you look at a number of our Hispanic brothers and sisters that were supporting Trump, they really did not, do, at least in my view, do a thorough job really, researching the issues. Because the Trump administration was saying, hey, the only people we're going to deport are people that are engaged in some serious criminal activity, and that's basically it. But a number of us were saying, well, wait a minute now, look at some of the things that are being said by, Stephen Miller's of the world, who works for the Trump administration, saying that, hey, here are the numbers of people that we're going to deport. And we're saying those numbers, as it relates to those that have committed criminal offenses, wasn't the same to get to these large goals that they were saying in terms of, deporting people. So they had to go beyond that. And that's what they actually did. So it's just a teachable moment that we all need to really pay attention to the news, really look beyond the rhetoric of the politicians, and really do our own independent, research. And so you'll see a lot of, our Hispanic brothers and sisters online saying, well, why did I do this? And this is very, very harmful for us. Now, the other thing that's really important to note is that the normal process is that every 10 years, all right, this has been settled, there is a census. And then based upon that census, then the states typically draw congressional districts, all right? Now, what this administration did, they said, hey, forget that norm. We're going to redraw it now because we think that there's a possibility that, the Republicans may lose the House of Representatives, and that could, give the Democrats control, and they'll be able to do investigations, what have you. So in the middle, before there was a census, before that 10-year period ended, they said, hey, we're just going to redistrict, now. And we're going to eliminate Democratic, districts, and we're going to gerrymander, which means basically tilt the scales towards one party, the Republican Party, and there'll be less, Democratic representatives. So in response to that, California says, well, hey, we have a redistricting commission that says it has to be fair, but they went to the voters and said, hey, in light of what Texas and other states have done, hey, we're going to gerrymander as well. So the interesting thing about it is that even though California was responding to what Texas has done, the Department of Justice basically said this week that they're going to do what? They're going to sue the state of California for something that Texas has done. So, we're not making this stuff up, and you can all do your own independent research, but it just seems to be a power grab. And I think, President Barack Obama and others have said it correctly. you know, Politicians don't get the chance to choose their voters. You have to make your appeal to the entire electorate. And what, is being done is they're putting aside that fundamental principle and then finding a way of, picking who they think are going to be favorable for them. And then you have the Supreme Court. We talked about the voting rights decision, which basically, it looks like it's going to eviscerate the Voting Rights Act. And that was one of the crown jewels of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And, your listeners should understand that, don't drink the Kool-Aid in terms of what you're seeing on TV to suggest somehow that, hey, the Voting Rights Act is trying to give Black people unfair advantage. No, what they're doing is they're responding to history. Black people didn't have the right to vote after Jim Crow was instituted after Plessy v. Ferguson in 1896, on through the 60s. I mean, you had whole counties in the South that had majority African Americans. They had zero African Americans that were able to vote. And so that's why they passed the Voting Rights Act. And they basically said, as a remedy for this rampant discrimination that prohibited African Americans from voting, that we would have an opportunity district for, people of color to elect the person of their choosing. And so, the Supreme Court, it looks like they appear to kind of throw all that out the window and say that you cannot enact that remedy. So we may very well have, if the Voting Rights Act Section 2 is deemed unconstitutional, you may very well have, very limited representation. We could lose half the Congressional Black Caucus. And finally, I'll leave you with this point. It's a good homework assignment. There's a great book out, James Clyburn, that talked about, it says the last, either the last date or the first date. I can't remember the title of the book. But the point is that after Reconstruction, all right, during that period from 1865 to 1876, you had Blacks that were elected to the House of Representatives and even to the Senate. And then when Jim Crow was instituted, 95 years, many of those former Confederate states had zero, Black representation. And so the point of the book is that, hey, the first 8 came in during Reconstruction, and then there was a 95-year gap until Clyburn and others were elected. So if we eviscerate the Voting Rights Act, we might go to those dark days where you'll see, very limited representation in the People's House, which is a House of Representatives. So we really have to understand that's a clear and present danger. We need to educate, our brothers and sisters, the younger people, about this clear and present danger, and let them know that, hey, we've seen this movie before and we don't want to repeat it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that, because of the holiday, we had some interesting election returns in different states. I saw that the Democratic Party had surprising results all over the country, even in Mississippi. I saw where the Democrat won 3 significant seats in the legislators that torpedoed the supermajority of Republicans in that state. But I see something else that I've not seen before. On my social media feed, I get a lot of Republicans that are having buyer's remorse. I mean, I'm not sure whether or not the algorithm of what they're doing with Facebook, maybe if I was a MAGA supporter, maybe I'd be getting more MAGA stuff. I'm not sure how this works, but it seemed to me that I'm being flooded every day with these Republicans now regretting that they had voted for Trump. Now, the reason I led into that, Marlon, is that we got this messy, murky situation regarding Jeffrey Epstein. And I don't remember a single day that they've not been talking about that. It's Epstein. And it's like a slow leak now. Every day there's some new revelation. Every day. And I'm not sure where this is headed. It just seemed like a slippery slope. And I don't understand what the ultimate consequence of all these investigations will result. Does it make any sense to you?
Yeah, well, it's just really a terrible, terrible situation, and I just think, we have to speak again with one voice. I mean, abusing, anyone, let alone, individuals that are under the age of 18, under the age of consent, is just dead wrong, and all the castigation that Mr. Epstein has received, Elaine Maxwell, who was his assistant, that was allegedly grooming people to allow Mr. Epstein to have access to, is just dead wrong. And then he had an island where these individuals were just abused. And so we saw action in England where one of the individuals in the royal family was allegedly involved, and there were some penalties for that individual in terms of taking titles away. So I suspect that, as, more information, gets out, that there will be consequences for individuals that, perhaps were involved and visited. Now, I don't think for a minute, unfortunately, that there'll be, consequences for the president. I just don't. I think that, he basically summed it up right when he said, hey, during the campaign in 2016, I can, and he said in so many words, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and still get supporters. And I think, he's right, that there are so many people that are invested, that I don't think it's going to move the needle with a lot of the core supporters, even if some of these allegations prove to be true, unfortunately. But it is interesting now that there was full push by the administration, and very conservative individuals to try to get this information out, because it was an allegation that Democrats were behind all this, the pedophilia and what have you. And now that there's allegations that there are more conservative people that are involved, there's kind of a pushback, so to speak, and that's wrong. I mean, there should be one standard, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're Republican, whether you're black or you're white. You and I both have children, raised children. That's just wrong. And I don't care who is involved. I don't care what you look like. You had no business dealing with this man. You had no business being on his island. And I just think we have to have one standard that, hey, if you've gone there and you know what's going on, you should be held accountable, in my view.
Yeah, it's really a sad situation, but it's this drip, 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 drip. It's this slow bleed, and I'm wondering where they're going, because every day I try to watch the news, and it's just flooded with people talking about this issue. They're obsessed with it. And at the end of the day, I was thinking to myself, okay, you do all these investigations. And so what if they found out that, for example, that then private citizen Trump engaged in misconduct with these minor girls? What's going to happen? Because I thought that they gave him immunity as the president. So does that mean that from a federal standpoint that it doesn't matter? Or even under state law, since they're controlled by Florida, which are Republican, does it really matter? And what are their intended outcomes? So all this investigation, I'm trying to figure out what is the end result. What are they actually trying to seek the outcome to be? Or they're trying to say that once all evidence out, there's people that engage in wrongdoing, should they be prosecuted, punished, or otherwise? Or what do they plan to do with this information once it is presented, if ever they get all of it? I know that they got the Epstein estate emails, which is pretty graphic, some of the stuff I've seen, but it seems like they have a few items to connect the evidence, because they got allegation from a dead guy. I'm not sure how much of that is admissible in a courtroom or what's not. It's got a tricky rule, what we call the hearsay rule. And there's some statute in terms of admissibility of evidence of people who make statements when they die, but I'm not sure how that evidence gets in if you start a criminal or civil case. Marlon, it's
Well,
not cut and dry to me.
right, but as your listeners, may remember, I mean, there was a huge scandal regarding the Catholic Church, and this was going back, decades. And so, what happened in those situations is that they were able to, amend legislations to extend the statute of limitations. So, I don't know if that's where we're going here or not. But my thing is that, hey, sunlight is the best antiseptic, and that they should investigate. And if there is wrongdoing, people should be held accountable. And I think, the Catholic Church scandal is kind of a model. First there was denial. There was a Pulitzer Prize article in a series of investigation in the Boston Globe, and it really kind of expanded, the investigation. There were eventually people that were charged. So, I suspect that that's probably what's going to happen in this case. And so it would be interesting to see if there's any culpability. And again, I just want to put out that, hey, everyone is, presumed not guilty. We don't know anything right now. We're not accusing anyone. But all I'm saying is that we should get to the bottom of it. And, children are our greatest gift, the greatest blessing from God. And, I remember, and it's not certainly pornography or pedophilia, but it's related. I was coaching my son's pee wee team, and there was a coach that was trying to get me to cheat. And I was like, There's no way in hell I'm gonna be an example to these kids and let somebody play that's not of the right age. And I know they're not the right age. I mean, that's just dead wrong. And so the point is that, there's a verse in the Bible that, hey, if you lead kids astray, I mean, that's one of the worst sins. And I think the same is true in terms of this, abusing minors. You just can't do it. And I just think it's really important that wherever the evidence leads, whoever is alleged, they're presumed guilty, but if there's a determination that they have abused, they should be held accountable to the full extent of the law. I mean, full stop. No excuses, full stop.
Well, Marlon, we had so many news items occur during the interim until we can't cover them all, but there's a few hot topics that kind of bothered me. About every week now, I see United States government starting what appears to be a war with Venezuela. I see the American bombers, for the first time that I can recall during my lifetime, that our country is bombing people at sea for allegedly transporting drugs. Under our laws, there's an important maxim that we all adhere to, particularly as lawyers. That is, it's called due process of law. And what that means is that if there's evidence of you committing a crime, there's a process where you get search warrant, you arrest the person, you bring them before a magistrate or a judge, they get bail or no bail, and then there's a trial process. And then a jury of peers find them guilty, not guilty, or otherwise. Now we see the United States government have been bombing these small boats at sea without any of that being considered. It got so bad, I saw that England said that we will not share information, intelligence anymore with the United States on this issue because we think the United States is wrong. I mean, it's common sense. Where do we get off as a country where we can unilaterally start murdering people at seas because we suspect that they're carrying drugs? And by the way, how does the drugs in Venezuela in those small boats end up in the United States anyway? Wouldn't that be, they have to fuel these things about 30 times in the United States? It didn't make any sense to me what they're doing.
Yes, I mean, first of all, I mean, there is a epidemic in our country, and I get it why people are frustrated. I mean, there are communities in Ohio that are just inundated with drugs, and I get it why people, this may resonate. But I think you're absolutely right, is that, we need to eradicate that problem in terms of, drugs coming in minority communities, rural communities, but we have to do it the right way. And you're absolutely right that if a foreign country is acting inappropriately, you have international courts, you have cooperation with allies, because these drugs are not only coming to the United States, they're coming to other countries as well. So and that's why, the United States was one of the leaders in the world in terms of creating these world entities following World War II. They tried to create the League of Nations after, World War I, and then the United Nations were the ones that put the imprimatur on this so that we can work together to promote peace and also to work together when there are problems like this. And so the concern I have is that we're not using these apparatuses that the United States has created to work together with our allies. Our allies are basically saying that we're not credible. So that's a clear and present danger, to all of us, in my view. And you're absolutely right. If there's evidence that someone has done something wrong, then use the international apparatus, present that evidence, and then proceed accordingly. But I don't think it should be unilateral, and I don't think it should be without, providing people the evidence that they have.
Well, the one of the other things, there were so many important issues. This issue, did the terrorist case make it to the Supreme Court yet? I
I'm
can't remember.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's a lot going on with the
Oh,
with
wait a
the
second. It did because they made a big deal about that. I just thought about it. It's one of the important issues. During the hearing, uh, uh, Justice Barrett came out and said a tariff is a tax. And I remember that being flashed
Oh,
over the
tariff.
news.
Okay, right. Okay, I got you. Yeah, the tariff decision. Yeah, you're right. You're right. There was a big argument at the Supreme Court, and it seemed as though the Supreme Court. It looks as though, at least if you look at some of the questions, that they very well may say that, hey, the administration has overstepped its bounds, because your audience should understand that, of course, there's three branches of government, all right. And the allegation is that the taxing authority is from the legislative branch, okay, and and what the executive branch is doing is usurping that power, taking the power that's designated for the legislative body, the Congress, and taking it on itself, and that may be a violation of the Constitution. So there were a number of questions, even from some of the conservative judges, that said, hey, this in fact may be a bridge too far. Now, we never know, how things may shake out. But it's interesting that, politically, the administration was saying, hey, it's not a tax. And then when they were trying to, argue for the case, they was talking about the fact that it's a tax. So, we need to get the story straight in terms of what's going on. But it will be interesting to see what happens, because I think you're very right, about, tariffs can have an adverse impact on, just everyday purchases. Like, for example, you were trying to, be a good citizen and purchase these bikes for children, and how the price spiked. And so it's something that has an impact on, so many, individuals. So it'll be interesting to see how that case turns out.
Well, the thing about the tariffs, though, is that I never seen tariffs arbitrarily imposed like that, because it was imposed worldwide. And a lot of people may not remember this, but the tariff laws was introduced back in the 20s. And some economists say that the tariffs resulted in the Great Depression, but everybody agreed that the imposition of tariffs extended the Great Depression. So in the history of America, the tariffs have not resulted in a favorable outcome. So now there have been billions of dollars collected in tariffs or taxes on American citizens. And now there was a proposal to give Americans $2,000 back. Okay. So let me get this straight. So we pay extra money to pay taxes, tariffs. So the money we pay, now we get to get part of it back. So how does that work? Because the tariff stays on for the next 10 years. Are they going to give us a check every year to pay us back? I mean, so I'm thinking this is like a band-aid. It
Right.
doesn't
Well,
make any sense to me, but what happens is that it was a very positive outcome for the president last time he did that when Congress passed this appropriation to give money to American citizens. The president himself signed the check, and so people thought that the President Trump was giving them money. And I remember talked to a guy in the barbershop say, "Oh yeah, the president sent my check." No, he didn't, you idiot. that, that had to be approved by Congress. And by the way, because he wanted to put his signature on it, it took him 3 extra weeks for you to get the check because he wanted to sign it electronically. So that was nothing that he did for you. It was the people in the House and the Senate. So it was kind of goofy. But other than tariffs, the other hot thing that happened, Marlon, was the tragedy in Jamaica. And, I don't think that Jamaica will recover from that travesty for at least 5 to 7 years. People still suffering, and I hope that people step up and kind of help out whenever they can, because I know that the people in Jamaica, they need a lot of help now.
Yeah, because their economy depends a lot on tourism. And so you're right. You're absolutely right that we need to really keep them in our prayers. And then we really need to look at it in terms of U.S. policy, USAID. A lot of that's been eradicated, and those are organizations that were prepared to provide aid to these countries. So it's something we need to be concerned about.
Yeah, Carl, you have a question or comment for us? Go ahead. You have to unmute, caller. No, you're on mute, caller. You have to unmute.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, this is Renee from New York City. I want to thank you guys again for
Hey,
doing
congratulations to your
another.
mayor, Mandami.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think I remember talking to you guys on the show, you attorneys on the show, like months ago, saying that there's no way Cuomo's getting elected and Mandami was gonna be the new mayor, Zoran. So anyway, but thank you. I'm happy about it. Now we just got to help him succeed. That's the bottom line. We got to make sure all these things that he wants to get in place, some of it happens. And so I'm going to tag off of that about how I feel about the Democratic Party. How I feel about the Democratic Party and how I feel about the Democratic Party at this point is that I don't think we need just one person and one kind of a Democrat, as you saw in the New Jersey race and the Virginia race, that we need different kind of Democrats all over the place that are going to address a singular situation. And to me, that singular situation is the billionaires versus the average person. And once we can get that messaging out that, we're all about, making sure the working or the average, and you don't have to be wealthy, but you definitely can't be a billionaire or a millionaire and be crying, like you don't have anything poor. So that's my opinion. And then the last thing I want to mention is,
hey, wait 1 second, Renee. Renee, hold on a second. Renee, when you
Sure.
talk about those races, one type of Democrat, I thought one of the most fascinating races that I watched with great interest was the Virginia races for governor and attorney general. And I knew that the governor's race was going to be won because the Republican candidate, I thought, was just bat crazy. I mean,
right.
That lady, I mean, she was saying stuff that's so stupid. I'm thinking, there's something, nothing she said made any sense to me. So I figured that she would be rejected. But then
female Herschel Walker, yes.
Oh man, you know what? I didn't think about that.
Yeah, she's a horrible candidate. She said something about Brown versus Board of Education, and that was criticizing that decision, which ended, at least helped end segregation in public schools. I mean, just opinions that just are ahistorical. So
I'm
I
sorry for
was.
interrupting, Attorney Lee and Attorney Primes. Go ahead. I was listening to you.
Oh, no, no, no. I was just saying that, when we talk about candidate Sears, just some of the statements that she made, and I think you're absolutely right, Renee, that a lot of it was akin to some of the bizarre comments of Herschel Walker. So,
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Renee. Sorry for cutting you off. Go ahead.
Okay, so the only thing I want to ask you, attorneys, is what do you think do you think that the release of these Epstein emails and also the 20,000 files that or documents that the Republican released, which I don't understand that strategy. How do you go ahead and just put 20,000 more out there? Is going to be significant enough to allow the Senate or I should say the Congress to vote to make sure that these files are released. Now, I know it has to go to his desk, so I want to know what you think about, will Trump actually sign it or not? And I got my own opinion, but I'm going to hang up and let you guys talk about it.
Wow. I never thought about it, Marlon. That's a good question.
yeah, well, I think there's some press reports that DOJ is trying to slow walk, the release, additional releases. But I think you're probably right that I would not be surprised if there's a veto or there's a move to kind of slow down the release. Because I think, yeah, but go ahead.
I don't have any comment.
Yeah, but Renee, I'm also interested in, I think some commentators are wondering, in terms of the victory of Mondani, whether or not that will be, a new model, for, Democrats running for office in the future, because it seems as though he was really in tune to, working people and talking about bread and butter issues. Do you think that the National Democratic Party or other candidates could learn from the campaign by the mayor-elect in New York City?
We got Imhotep on the line. Go ahead,
Oh,
Imhotep.
imitate now.
All right. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good
Thanks
morning.
for taking my call, Brother Nate, Brother Grimes, listening. All back and forth working here, but I was on you to come off, but I just want to throw this out there to you real quick. The first, we see that the Finance and Justice Department is looking to appeal, to file a lawsuit against California for their redistricting plans. What precedent there, or precedent period? Because I'm confused. They pushed Texas, Missouri, and North Carolina to do it. They didn't file a lawsuit there. Logic says, then what are you all complaining about now? And then we also see that Indiana did not have the votes and the support to redo that. So what's the logic at here? Can you somebody explain? Thank you.
Well, what they're trying to say is that the Supreme Court, indicated that you can gerrymander, which means basically setting the political lines for districts based on politics, but you can't do it on race. So what the Department of Justice is alleging is that what they're doing in Texas is based upon politics, and what they're doing in California is based upon race. I think you're right that they're picking and choosing, and I think it's going to be a question of credibility because I think both of them arguably are politics, and you're looking at similarly situated circumstances, and you're treating them differently. So it's something of concern that we'll have to watch and see what happens with the lawsuit.
Okay. I thank you, Marlon, and I thank you, our guests, for calling in today. Join us next week as we deal with legal issues of the day. Take care, everybody.
Everyone have a